It's good to see you again, Ryan.
Good to see you too.
Did you survive the last episode? I'm not sure if the viewers did. Got to be shorter today.
Good. Then we're going to talk about something other than Battleship New Jersey?
No, actually, that's exactly what we're going to talk about.
I guess I'll set an alarm then?
Yeah, I guess we'll see. What's going on here? Anything fun and exciting? Just another day in ship curation. I heard you had a leak in the air conditioner, taking on water.
Oh yeah, we don't take any water from outside of the ship. It's purely the ship's own plumbing that fails.
Yeah, exactly. How many tanks filled up? How many gallons of water did you take on?
It's just a couple hundred.
Oh, just a couple hundred. Oh, okay, sure, no problem. It's just like a feather to this ship.
If you take on less than 10 tons of weight, the damage control manual says to just disregard it. Don't worry about counter flooding or anything. It's negligible.
Okay, 10 tons.
And we needed 500,000 gallons to do 2,000 tons.
Yeah.
Which means that 300 gallons is
just nothing.
Maybe a little bit over 1 ton.
Yeah.
A ton and a quarter, something like that.
It's irrelevant.
I don't even get out of bed for that.
But that is what I wanted to sort of get into
with
today's episode. A month or 3 months ago, we did, more than a couple months ago, we did a episode where we asked, did we build too many ships of a certain type?
Yeah.
That was a popular episode.
Mm-hmm.
That also then inspired Rick to do Awakening the Sleeping Giant, the series.
What was that? 4 or 5 parts?
That was 5 parts, 42, 43, 44, 45, and then a postscript detailing the deactivation of a lot of the ships at the end of the war. Fun fact, the thumbnails of each one of those videos is New Jersey in one of those years.
You know, I noticed each one looking at it. Oh, there's New Jersey under construction. There's New Jersey underway. But I never realized, because there were other videos that came out in between those.
I know. Exactly.
I never realized that all 5 of them as a series.
I know. So when you go and you click on the series, because there's
you have it as a playlist.
I have it as a playlist that separates them from the normal channel markers series, and yeah, you can see them. You know, from construction to mothball.
I might have to go back and listen to that again, because I can listen to Rick's voice all night.
Oh, yeah. It puts me to sleep so easily. No, I'm just kidding. People did ask, though, about the sort of mass wave of deactivation at the end of World War II. So you go from this ginormous 6,000 plus ship fleet with millions of guys, and then you cut that down. And you do that relatively quickly.
Yeah, within a couple of years.
And then just a few years later, you're already back in Korea. And things are like, well, now I got to spin this back up again. So today I wanted to just address that specific segment. So this is a little bit more specific than we're like usually used to doing. Normally we're like broad topics.
No, but deep dives are totally my thing.
Yeah. So I wanted to discuss specifically New Jersey's from 1945, sort of the yard period then, sort of to build her out to the 45 spec that like what we built in the model.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a few more years after that, being deactivated, mothballed, but then having to turn around, and then maybe you could shed some light on some of the things that were then the major changes that had happened even between World War II and Korea. Sound good?
Yeah, piece of cake.
Want to roll the intro?
Let's roll it.
Okay. Back to the old intro. No more Queen Mary horn.
Still have to get the New Jersey horn recording.
You should do that whenever you get around to it. All right, Ryan. New Jersey. let's start off by going with what that 45-yard period accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. Turn it over to you.
They changed the camouflage scheme.
That's it? Paint job?
She had been all blue, and they painted basically everything above the top of the main deck light gray.
Is the all blue the Black Dragon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Measure 22 camouflage scheme, and then went back to Measure 21.
Is that the deck too?
Yes.
Everything is blue.
Everything is dark blue.
Okay.
Well, technically, there's it's like Ocean Blue 5S is the side, and Deck Blue 5D is the deck. So they're slightly different colors. I swear.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally not just a completely all blue ship.
We're mixing that red lead and that white like you asked, but you're not going to like it. No. Okay. Okay. So you get the two-tone camouflage. What else? What else do we get?
So that's easily the most visually striking indicator of.
So you can see when you see it in pictures.
Yeah.
That's when you know. Okay, this is post.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the other most striking thing probably is we get retrofitted with the square style enclosed bridge.
Yes.
That the other Iowas
were built with.
That Missouri and Wisconsin were built with.
Correct. Yeah.
Iowa and New Jersey are both originally built with an open bridge, a la the North Carolinas, a la the South Dakotas. They decide they don't like that during trials. Iowa spends her first year or more of the war with that.
Open.
With the open bridge.
But New Jersey gets the enclosed rounded bridge.
Exactly. Yeah. And while they like that, it's an improvement. Being rounded so it's conformal with the conning tower.
Yes.
Doesn't leave room for equipment in there. It's got enough room for a walkway around it.
Yeah, but the moment you put something in there, it blocks the space.
Exactly. Yeah. So going to a thing with corners,
yes,
a square bridge, now there are these corners on the edges where you can put the captain's chair, where you can put the surface search radar set, where you can add some of this equipment and even give you room for growth if, say, you wanted to keep the ship around for another, I don't know, 30, 40 years or so.
Gasp. Can't imagine why you'd want to do that.
Yeah, it's real interesting how the Iowas go through these iterations, and then as Iowa and then New Jersey go through their major yard periods, they get that stuff retrofitted in. Mm. At the same time, they do some work on the upper level of superstructure, the O11 level, which early on had been a relatively small space, but that's the air defense warfare platform. Mm. It turns out during World War II, air defense warfare is a little bit important. So they add an expansion onto that platform, which Iowa and New Jersey get one version. I call it the plus sign shape.
Yes.
Wisconsin and Missouri get a different version, the T shape.
Yeah.
But it adds a little bit more room for that lieutenant commander, the air defense warfare officer, and his staff up there to be able to move around.
Yeah, and if we go up there, you can see like where the cuts and the welds were made to expand that. Yeah. Yeah,
because that space expands like basically every single yard period the ship has. Mm-hmm. You can see the original build, you can see the 1945, you can see the 1960s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the thumbnails I mentioned too, you can see the bridge change in the exactly.
It's a little bit more built up over time.
The mast changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the attached to the funnel, right?
Yeah. So the entire electronics suite gets updated.
Okay.
So New Jersey is as she's being designed, radar isn't really a thing. By the time she starts construction, radar is ubiquitous. So she incorporates radar from day one of construction, essentially on. But she's commissioned 1943 with a fairly standard 1942, 1943 radar set suite. And by 1945, the electronic capabilities have just gone through the roof. So she gets retrofitted with a new air search set and updated surface search sets. And because you've got all these new electronics being installed up above, she needs more mast space for it.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really much room for the foremast to grow to accommodate that. It won't really until the 1980s. They turned it into the full tripod thing. But there was room to take the little pole mast at the mounted on the back of funnel 2 and turn it into a tripod mast. And later on, that'll even get turned into a quadruped mast and expanded even further.
That mast is, I think, the most interesting because it's really like chunky and kind of beefy.
Yeah, it goes from a pole to being chunky.
And it almost like takes you back to the designs like from the like pre-war, like the and
it almost looks like the cage masts, and now you've got these two superstructures, and those cage masts were just to get viewing platforms. So we're doing the same thing with just electronic viewing. You don't have people up there. You've got these antennas up there. And I always thought the same thing about the tripod mast in the 1980s. It's like, oh, wow, we're going back to tripods. It's like the 1920s all over again.
Yeah, and it very much has that vibe. If you didn't know any better, it's what it looks like. So, okay. I always thought it was always interesting, too, when you had masts and other pieces sort of in the direct line of the exhaust from the funnels. Because they paint all that stuff black, so it doesn't show when it gets coated black.
Basically, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's more cosmetic than anything.
Yeah. Does that actually interfere with anything? Because you've got like sooty exhaust garbage now coating various electronic sensors and what have you. Does that interfere with anything, to your knowledge?
No, and we didn't find more corrosion around, say, the tripod mast that's built right over that forward funnel. Like that's from the heat and the corrosive exhaust gases and things like that.
Yeah.
We really didn't see anything extra there. It's a little more chalky. You feel it comes off on your hands more than other places, but I don't think it caused any major issues, especially.
Well, I wouldn't think that it would cause like corrosion. In my mind, it's just like sort of it cakes all that in this like sooty, oily kind of layer. And then if you have a sensitive piece of electronic equipment, like a radar thing, then over time, as those tolerances change, it might throw off signals. I don't know. Am I like reading too much into it, or?
No, I've often asked myself that question as well, but I've never been able to find anywhere documentation about, oh, we did this to keep that from happening, or we had to clean or maintain this to some extent more than, say, the foremast where it isn't quite as in. So I'm not sure. I cannot confirm that it did cause any problems at this time.
So, okay. Thank you for at least addressing that. I can sleep better at night. Okay, so it's July 45?
Yeah, that's more or less when this yard period ends.
Yeah, okay,
and the ship goes back to the war. She's there for like 2 or 3 months, like May, June, July. She starts to head back.
So 80 years ago, roughly.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
The ship gets turned into like almost like what you see now. Obviously, masts will change and tomahawks will change, but really the bridge and like that distinct shape, all that is 45, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that when her AA, like the amount of 20s and 40s, is the most?
Yes. So earlier on, throughout the first couple of years of the war, they update her 40 millimeter suite. They add 4 more mounts, which requires them to move around some of the 20 millimeter guns. And she has that for most of the war. And during this 1945 yard period, they remove 8 single 20 millimeter guns, replace them with 8 twin 20 millimeter guns.
Okay. The mounting positions stay the same.
Correct.
You're just doubling the barrels.
So she goes from 49 barrels to 57 barrels of 20 millimeter.
Okay.
So that is her ultimate wartime configuration.
And how many 40 barrels?
She is originally built with 16 quad mounts, which is obviously
64.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that. And she ends up with 20 of those quad mounts for a total of 80 barrels.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So substantial. We're going to do.
I think Saratoga might be the only wartime ship with more 40 millimeters than an Iowa-class battleship.
We're going to do AA in a different.
Yeah.
In next episode, but I just wanted to sort of get that out in the air and, so absorbed. Okay, so then as we know, she goes back to the Pacific, a little bit more shooting, a little more of that, or ends somewhat abruptly.
Yeah, they're preparing for an invasion of Japan. New Jersey is going to be Spruance's flagship when Spruance commands Operation Olympic, and we invade the southern Japanese islands.
But obviously, with the atomic bombs and what have you, Japan surrenders, and all of a sudden it's like full stop. Like, okay, now what?
Yeah, now what? Battleship New Jersey is used, like many other ships, immediately post-war as part of the Operation Magic Carpet.
Yes.
She serves briefly as Spruance's flagship, as the flagship of the occupation of Japan.
Yes, I've seen photos of her in that. And I have film footage too. I might stick it in actually in one of the Japanese harbors with his flag or what have you. So yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so she is the flagship of the occupation of Japan. Spruance rotates home for a hero's welcome, and his chief of staff, Admiral Towers, takes over as from New Jersey as the admiral in charge of the occupation of Japan. And then eventually, there's no Japanese Navy here left to contest the occupation of Japan. So New Jersey is used for Operation Magic Carpet, bringing folks home.
But there's a mythical irradiated dinosaur.
Oh, well, once we put him down.
Okay, gotcha. All battleship style.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rihanna. Anyway, okay. So that'll never not be funny. Okay. So, and then New Jersey is still active until when?
She serves until 1948, which is when most of the battleships are taken out. So, like right in that 1947, 1948.
So
we're talking everything. The Pearl Harbor battleships that are still left.
So now, as Rick details in the video, pretty much all the old stuff is decommissioned instantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this is, I got so canceled in that last episode from our last filming when I said I didn't like the standard class battleships. Everyone was like,
the heck is wrong with your taste?
Shame.
They're so good.
Shame.
So good.
But we spent, so they all got, most of them got really brewed up at Pearl Harbor. Then they were amazingly, like, heroically refloated.
Yeah.
Rebuilt at pretty decent expense, sailed out in the Pacific, did, shore bombardment, anti-aircraft platform, took additional damage, so they were there. But
give Fuso and Yamashiro
a
solid pounding.
But even still, as soon as the war ends, the Navy's like, no, these are actually junk. Like, sorry.
And my beloved Maryland, BB-46, never got any major updates. She was at the end of her life.
Well, I mean, some of these
West
ships,
Virginia, California, Tennessee, with their huge rebuilds that put them on par with the modern battleships.
Whoa.
Their fire control, their torpedo protection was better.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, if I bolt a football field of steel on the side of my ship, sure, my torpedo protection will be better. But they were slow as dirt.
They're just being used for shore bombardment. You don't need a fast battleship for that.
Slow as dirt.
They can't transit the canal anymore to the Atlantic.
Ridiculous fuel hogs. And then I think, as we've even said, in the post-war environment, it's really like service life extension through like upgrades in electronics. Power generation is always something that you've talked about.
Yeah.
And did I mention they were slow as dirt?
Well, they're turboelectric, so they've got good power generation.
Some of them.
The ones that are worth saving, Tennessee, California, West Virginia, they're not all worth saving. But they do use something like 30% more fuel than the fast battleships. They've just got more boilers to achieve a smaller horsepower. But they have less manning requirements as well. So there's some cost savings there. And let's face it, the United States is not wanting for fuel. We're not decommissioning ships because they're fuel hogs.
Did I mention they were slow as dirt?
It doesn't matter. They are siege engines.
Okay.
We besieged enemy island with these ships.
Okay. So once the dirt finally returns to the United States, this isn't an opinion. This is what happened.
Yeah.
The Navy immediately takes them all out.
And they're wrong, but they do that.
They're just like in the post-war environment with no other naval force to shoot at. We don't predict anything where we're going to need siege engines or whatever. They spent all this time and all this money rebuilding all those Pearl Harbor survivors, and then they immediately took them out. And even like the new battleships, North Carolina, Washington. I mean, those ships aren't even that old, but North Carolina is a product of the interwar period, and she, despite being a fast battleship, is still not even as to what they want.
Yeah.
And the South Dakotas are even not. And so you, in a period of like 2 years, you go from all the battleships.
Yeah, what do we have, like 18 in commission, somewhere around that?
To then having like you North Carolina gets laid up really quickly. The Sodaks get laid up really quickly.
They're taken out even before North Carolina and Washington because they've got so much less room.
Yes, because they're even squattier, even though they're newer.
Yeah. Definitely more capable ships.
And then within like a couple years, it's just the Iowas. And then within a year or two, you only have
Missouri's the only one that's retained,
right,
because of her association with Truman being from that state and his daughter christening her. And even she is in kind of a reserve status. She's more used as a training ship and a ship of state than as a frontline warship with a full crew and full combat capabilities. So
Admiral King, during the war, dies on this hill of, as Rick talks about in the video, like, was the shipbuilding program during the war overkill? Yes. Was it justifiable? Yes, because you don't necessarily know how long this is going to go. And even losses, even up through 1945, make you think, wow, like, because I'm having, how many kamikazes took out Essex class carriers? And
like 43, 44, we suffer very few losses. 42, of course, only a ton of attrition. But then 45, the Japanese developed these new tactics which cause tremendous loss. And even if they're not sinking the ships, they're knocking our frontline carriers out for the rest of the war.
Yeah, I mean, they said, Franklin goes back permanently. I mean, Saratoga spends the entire war in and out of the yard for
Bunker
various
Hill.
reasons. And Ticonderoga. And so it's just right there towards the end, the point that King's trying to make is like, well, I need hulls because, this one's in the yard, this one is sailing back. Oh, and by the way, when this one is sailing back, it needs a full escort of destroyers and crews and stuff like that. I'm not just sending this Essex class carrier back all the way to the West Coast alone. Yeah. And especially if it's damaged, so he's like, this is what's causing all this. So do they overbuild? Sure. Was it justifiable? Sure. Did King push to get the ships that he wanted? Yes. Did he get them? Most of them.
Yeah, mostly. He was probably 75, 90%.
But within within 3 years, because like especially all those later ships, they had that like 1947-ish completion like date. Yeah. But then like by 48, just a year later, you end up with this really reduced, this tiny force. But with that being said, though, all the ships that are retained are the newest, the best. Yeah. Like, so that when they're called on, the Navy has the best options to pull ships out of mothballs and get them going again.
I would say they're the newest ones that have gone through their teething process. There were a couple of ships that are like completed brand new and then immediately put into mothballs because they hadn't worked up, but they just kept the ones that had been worked up. But it is the newest and the best. All of the pre-war ships can go away. All of the early warships that have seen the brunt of the fighting can go away.
So let's bring this back to New Jersey then. Okay. So she's decommissioned in
1948.
48. Yeah. With the other three Iowas like we discussed.
Yeah. She spends a little bit of time in the later 40s as a training ship, midshipman cruises, things like that.
Must be nice.
Yeah. And then 1948, the 3 Iowas that aren't named after the president's home state are taken out of service.
Fucking Truman. Anyway, sorry.
Without Truman, though, there would have been no battleships. They would have taken them all out of service.
Who would have done that?
Well, probably not Roosevelt if he hadn't have died, but Truman had to fight to keep his home state ship in service. If there wasn't a president there who was fighting for it,
I see. I see what you're saying. Hypothetically,
yeah,
all the battleships could have been deactivated. Okay.
Yeah, but instead we do keep one as a training pipeline through that very brief period of time.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Okay, so the ship, so the Iowa class battleships are mothballed.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just briefly go over what that process looks like?
It's interesting because it's a little bit different than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it is very much all of the spare parts, everything like obviously food rots. We're not going to keep food on board, but everything non-perishable will stay on board. Essentially, anything that doesn't move is covered in paint. Anything that does move is covered in preservative greases like a cosmoline. Not the type of grease that you would use to keep it running properly, but something heavier to keep it from rusting.
Right. So stop the rust, and it's not being washed away by rain.
Yeah.
It's so thick and heavy that it's staying in place. It's covering that metal surface, and that's it.
It's a long-term hydrophobic barrier.
Yeah.
The ships get dehumidification gear inside. Oftentimes, a lot of their top hamper, those sensitive electronics and things like that, are taken down and stored inside, as are things that break down in UV, like the rubberized canvas bloomers for the guns.
Oh, yeah.
Those are stored inside the ship so that they don't continue to break down with nobody manning them. Some ships early on, the Navy will have like one crew is manning all of the ships at this pier instead of having one crew per ship. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's no manning. There are some people at this yard and they'll go through and do periodic checks.
Just base visual inspection, make sure it's not flooding for some reason.
Exactly. Yeah. You do get rainwater intrusion.
Yeah.
And they set up dehumidification gear inside the ship. They seal up everything, usually except one door. On Iowa-class battleships, it's usually the boardroom door. And then they open up a lot of the interior spaces so that they can ventilate them with this dehumidification gear that they install periodically throughout.
The ship's not that old at this point. So,
I mean, New Jersey started in 40, completed in 43, out of service 5 years later in 48.
So relatively in good shape.
Yeah.
All things considered.
It had been some pretty hard running in wartime, but realistically, a lot of that is fixed during her mid-1945 refit.
Yeah.
And then she makes it out to the Western Pacific again and the war ends. So a lot of her hardest wartime steaming has been fixed already by the time she's decommissioned. And she's, of course, got a crack crew, like a combat experienced crew maintaining all of these systems.
Okay. Right. So for the 45 mothballing decommission, is everything pretty much just left in place?
Yeah, for the 48 one, pretty much everything is left in place. They take the food off.
Yeah.
They take things like the propellant and the projectiles off.
Yeah.
Those like climate controlled storage, but we're not going to run the chillers and things in the magazines. The dehumidifiers don't quite do that much climate control. But otherwise, like the spare parts are still on there, which is something that they don't so much do when modern ships are mothballed, or when these ships will be mothballed later on. But everything's still there. The antennas have been taken off, but they're stored inside the ship, and they'll be just pulled back out and put on when they're needed again.
I guess the idea is that the ship is so new that the assumption is that it is going to be brought back.
Yes.
Versus being mothballed with the idea that we don't know if it will be brought back. So maybe we can afford. So it's you want to keep all those parts together. That way the reactivation time takes less, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the intent. And the intent at that time very much was these ships are built for a 20, 25-year service life. They've gotten 5 years of service. They're still state of the art. We're going to get into another shooting war soon. They will be brought back. It's not quite like in the 60s or the 80s when they're being buttoned up and it's like, are we ever going to see the likes of these again? I'm not sure. It very much is, these are going to be back.
Yeah. So it's just seal them up, protect it to make sure that nothing rusts or gets worse or anything.
Oh, I forgot to mention the most striking feature of these mothballings. You have things like the 40 millimeter guns.
I was going to say the famous bits are the
igloos that are put over these because these guns have so many moving mechanical parts to them, and they're exposed exterior. Some get removed outright, like stuff at the bow on some of the ships get pulled out. But by and large, they just get covered with these igloos. 20 millimeter guns, on the other hand, are...
I was going to say, the 20s are light enough to be removed.
Yeah, you can remove the barrel and stow them inside the ship. Or potentially, since they're weapons, they may have been stored in a warehouse or armory. I don't entirely know.
Yeah, but the 40s are so heavy, especially with the full assembled mount, that you're not yanking that off.
Yeah, the guns, they're directors, which are similar token. Those are just covered by those really striking igloos.
Are those sealed? Like, is there a gasket on the bottom so that when it's pushed down, it's relatively like air sealed? Or is it just like a cover that's...
No, it's pretty much sealed. And I don't know if it's a gasket. It's probably more that they caulk it once it's down. But yeah, they're sealed.
Oh, okay. I always wondered that. But yeah, so that's obviously the most sort of striking thing about that period is when ships still had the 40s. So you still had the big igloos. And that's kind of like, that's when a ship is from that period or mothball because the 40 that you have the igloo, obviously when the 40s go away, well, you don't need the igloos anymore. So then the ship is in mothballs from
48 to 50. It's just 2 years.
Just 2 years. So then obviously we're being then in 50 reactivated for Korea. Do you know what? So we've had this yard period in 45, which the ship receives major upgrades, obviously bridge, whole 9 yards. Very little use at the end of 40, light use and deactivation from 46, 47, 48.
And there were some yard periods in there, including a fairly substantial one to decommission the ship.
So the ship has had decent maintenance in these 5 years, as well as just being off for 2.
Yeah.
And being preserved. So when we go back to the yard in 50, can you elaborate then?
First, I want to say this. New Jersey is the first of the battleships brought back. Missouri, of course, is already in commission. She gets sent over, and then New Jersey is the second one to be sent over. She's actually the third one I would have picked to go over. Or I should say the Iowa class is the third class I would have picked. Were it up to me, I would have reactivated West Virginia, California, Tennessee first. They're being used for shore bombardment. They don't need to be fast. They're going to be cheaper to man. They're practically new ships after their rebuilds. So I would send those ships over there first. And then if not them, my beloved Alaska and Guam. And those two Camden-built ladies, 12-inch gun cruisers. They've got the speed to keep up with the aircraft carriers. They've got an Essex-class power plant in them. And they're even newer than the Iowa-class battleships. They've got virtually no service life on them.
So that is interesting because we've discussed this before where the Navy, and I feel like the Iowa-class battleships, these are the Navy's biggest toys. And like any kid, you want to play with your biggest toy.
Yeah.
And so, but also the politics behind it. Like, and for the GIs fighting in Korea, if the shell coming in from a cruiser versus a battleship, isn't there morale boost effect there too? I mean, come on.
Arguably, although I'd say a 12-inch round isn't going to be much less than a 16-inch round.
No, but see, fair. But again, we're just looking at like cost and crew size and explosive filler and all this. But when you tell the guys in the suck in Korea, like, oh, Battleship New Jersey is providing fire support, and you feel better than. Okay, obviously, at the end of the day, the Navy providing fire support is going to be a morale boost.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like if you tell some Marine or even some Army guy, like, here come the battleship rounds. I think there's just leftover from World War II, where it's just that means something.
I can't disagree with that, except during the Vietnam War, the Navy sure didn't care about that. They do bring New Jersey back for one. She spends like 6 months in country in 1969. But otherwise, it's just the gun cruisers that are providing all that shore battery support.
But think about it. But only 5 years has gone by from World War II to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of people. Yes, you have new troops fighting in Korea. But at the same time, you do also have a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas even another decade, 2 decades later with Vietnam, kind of not the same. You have like grunts on the ground who, you know what I mean? They themselves weren't being backed up by.
Yeah, I guess.
Battleship. I don't know. Maybe it's. I'm just trying to think outside the box. Like,
and during Vietnam, it could certainly be said, "Oh, they're sending this obsolete old ship to come help us," as opposed to something newer. And
what's newer in Vietnam?
I mean, technically, the gun cruisers aren't really any newer, but
they're all just Baltimore.
The 18-year-old kid ashore doesn't necessarily know that.
Yeah, whatever.
Newport News is a little bit newer.
Whatever. 2 years. Cool story. Yeah, Worcester. Cool story. So, okay. Obviously, I agree. I think that the Navy could have better used, because that was always my question. Why is Salem like a fleet flagship, and why not Alaska? But then as you said, well, Alaska is the size of, is larger even than a heavy cruiser. It's a large cruiser. There's a concept, and then Salem, Baltimore size, but has that that newer gun system, which allows it to sort of play in the bigger leagues. And so there's an example of bang for buck. Like, okay, we're using our brains here. We can get a really good ship, the newest, but doesn't have necessarily the biggest guns. But then you're right, the Navy keeps bringing back the Iowas all the time, when in reality.
And if you've ever played like tabletop wargaming games, and you're given X amount of points to buy something, spending all those points on a super ship usually is better than spending all those points on 10 smaller ships or 2 smaller battleships even.
Yeah.
That super ship has enough armor that it will reject enough of the shells from those smaller ships that it ends up sinking them both, which isn't necessarily what it's like in real life. Having 2 smaller ships that can be in multiple places, distributed lethality is the credo of the modern Navy. But, if you're just looking at it from a wargaming's perspective, having the biggest and the best, even if you've only got 4 of them total, is there is an argument to be made for that. I just think Tennessee, California, West Virginia would have been better choices, and then Alaska and Guam, and then the Iowa class. Now, I wouldn't have scrapped the Iowa class. I would have still kept them around.
But the whole point of the Iowa class speed, though, is because even by 50, how much of the World War II anti-aircraft battery remains?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. In 1950, she retains all of her 5-inch guns.
Right.
She retains all of her 40 millimeter guns.
Right.
She loses all of her single 20 millimeter guns. So now she's down to the 8 twin mounts that were added in 1945.
Okay.
And then they add 8 more twin mounts.
Okay.
So that's 16 total mounts, 32 total barrels. However, by 1951, by the end of that year, they've all been removed. So all the 20 millimeters go away by that point.
So even by Korea, just 5 years later after the end of World War II, the 20 millimeter is obviously already aircraft are just not getting into the point where we feel like that's an effective weapon system anymore.
They are not considered anti-aircraft guns at that time. They're there to shoot mines in the water, and they're there for the same reason why we've still got 50 cals today. Right. Like if there's swimmers or small boats or boarders or anything like that, you can use the 20 millimeter.
One of my biggest questions was, why didn't the Iowa class, why weren't the quad 40 mounts switched for the twin 3-inch 50 mounts?
Oh, there is a blueprint for that. And
well, because, I mean, for the same reason why those late war cruisers got the 3-inch 50s, because airplanes are now faster and heavier, you need more stopping power. So why is it that that New Jersey and the Iowa class battleships don't come out of reactivation in the 50s with 3-inch 50s in the gun tubs of the 40 millimeter?
It's such a more capable weapon system. We could have carried something like 12 to 14 of the twin 3-inch guns in place of the 20 quad 40s that we had. I don't disagree with them not putting them on in 1950. They're rushing these ships to get them off the Korean coast as quickly as possible.
I guess they just maybe the aircraft threat, like unlike in World War II, we don't necessarily think that the North Koreans are going to hurl a bunch of planes at this fleet off. They just don't seem to have that type of capability.
And kind of early war, we weren't worried about air dominance. And it's mid-war when the MiG-15 start to come in that all of a sudden there's this crisis of air dominance before we get a new generation of swept-wing fighters in.
Isn't that crazy to think, like, in Korea, you're talking about like Corsairs with bombs and rockets, and then all of a sudden MiG-15s and Sabre, and it's ridiculous to think this sudden and like sort of immediate crossover to the point where, again, like 40 millimeter Bofors, oh, that's a fantastic weapon that just obliterated like whole scores of Japanese aircraft, and now it's like
it's obsolete.
Get rid of that.
It's absolutely wild to think of, and we don't think of the Korean War as being a war of innovation the way World War II. Like
really was
something that was state of the art at the beginning of World War II has been rendered obsolete 2 or 3 times over by the end of the war. You don't think about that in Korea, but it's absolutely the case for some core technologies.
So
it does make sense though post-war to update the 40 millimeters to 3-inch guns, and they even start on Iowa, Wisconsin, New Jersey. They start to add some of the fire control systems for them. And then the money dries up post-war and they never finish the job. And it was always like, okay, when we reactivate these in the later 50s or the early 60s.
But that doesn't happen then. And then by the time Vietnam comes around, then that system is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So, okay. I get you. So to answer the question for the viewer then, the ships are knowingly mothballed in the late 40s, pretty much to the point where we know we're going to bring them back sometime relatively soon, soon. So therefore, they're mothballed in a way. All the spare parts are on board. You got equipment, stuff is done. So they actually get brought back relatively quickly, even to the point where they don't receive upgrades to anti-aircraft weaponry and things like that.
Yeah, and many of their systems, electronics, like radios and radars, don't receive significant upgrades and don't really need it at that time. It's still relatively state-of-the-art. I would be remiss if I didn't mention probably the most striking update during this period, and it's really unique because it's a modification that's made while these ships are still in mothballs by and large, as opposed to generally you don't do work on mothball ships.
Yeah, there has to be a reason why. Yeah.
So the mothballed battleships and even some of the mothballed cruisers, they go through at some point in the late 40s, early 50s in some ships' cases, and they remove all of the catapults for the float planes.
Right.
And then that leaves the fantail deck that had been for that capable of supporting helicopters. And unlike during the 60s or the 80s when they had to build a specific flight deck, there aren't really any modifications done to support helicopters.
So the helicopters at that period are still light enough to where you can just land them on the steel deck and it's okay.
Yeah, or the wooden deck in our case.
Or the wooden deck, sorry. And then later on, they have to
do a raised level flight deck that doesn't have the curve of the ship. And that doesn't happen on us until 68. So during the entire 1950s, we're operating helicopters there. We don't have a helicopter landing facility like they build over top of Turret 3 in the 80s. It's just an LSO standing on deck, like waving paddles. It's not all the glide slope indicators and flight deck lights and things that are added later on in the ship's career. But still, it's such that's easily the most advanced technology that these ships receive. It is the most technological update that these ships get is removing those catapults and the aircraft and using the remaining facility for the helicopters. Worth pointing out, though, we do retain the aviation crane because the space where we were going to keep the ship's boats between the funnels gets taken over by anti-aircraft guns, and the cranes for the ship's boats are never installed. So they store the boats on the fantail just forward of the flight deck between turret 3 and the flight deck, and they roll them back to the old aviation crane and use that to put the boats in the water. So usually, rather than having the crane over the fantail of the ship, they would have it pivoted around, hanging off the back of the ship, so that the helicopters had a fairly unobstructed landing site.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense. We, like 2 years ago too, we did an episode about the AA sort of completed variant of like Illinois or Kentucky.
Oh yeah.
So the idea was like finish one of those hulls, stick Des Moines turrets on it, and then anyway. The only reason why I'm bringing this up is because, and that would have been also sort of in this 1950s era, like, the war's coming back, so now we need stuff again, because Kentucky's hull was put on ice and everything. It's just hanging around even in this reactivation period. But the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because I can that model in World of Warships depicts the 50s era, like big tripod, like the mast we were talking about.
Yeah, the quadrupedal mast.
And that model also has 3-inch 50s in place of the 40s. So I'll just put that on screen so you can kind of get an idea of what like a 1950s Iowa would look like with 3-inch 50s. Don't mind the quad 8-inch. But yeah. So very interesting. But yeah, that was always my biggest thing. It was like, why did we not just swap the twin 3-inch 50s in place of the 40s? It just seems like that's just sort of the natural progression. And so many other ships in the fleet had them and were fielding those weapons. You would think, like, just for logistic reasons and stuff, okay, put the 40s away. We need the best guns. The battleships, like you said, the super ship needs the best guns. Like, just make it so.
And I think the whole reason why we don't is because the Navy never does standardize. The 40 millimeter does stay in service across a number of platforms throughout this entire period. So it never was a logistical nightmare getting spare parts or ammo or trained people or directors, that sort of stuff.
Smaller ships still had 40s and other things in various places, and they were putting 40s on tank chassis and doing stuff. So the Duster. What is that?
The Duster,
Yeah. Isn't that like a wolf? Is that a Hellcat or was it a Wolverine? What? I'm like, I can't forget what the actual chassis is based on. I think
Patton or
it kind of
something.
reminds me of Hellcat, like the
Yeah.
tank destroyer from World War II. I can't remember. And then it's just that twin 40 on the top. It's such a Chad thing.
Right?
Driving around with your 40, like cutting down trees and everything.
But your radar director, so you can also pretty
Yeah.
easily take down aircraft if they're attacking your tank column. Yeah,
Mhm.
great weapon system.
Yeah. So to your point, like the 40 is still a very combat capable weapon, even for the next couple of decades. But like I said, I still don't really think that maybe.
Or even mounting them in aircraft, like the AC-130.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Orbit and pump those 40mm rounds into targets on the ground.
Sure. So a little bit of a shorter episode today. I appreciate it. But again, if you have questions, either in the videos, we do try to take them into consideration for future things. And so
Just keep in mind that we're meeting about once a quarter to
Yeah.
film the next quarter's videos. So it may well be 3 months between when you make the comment and when we're able to answer it with the
Right.
video.
So thanks, Ryan. Again, I know this was a little short, very specific topic today.
It's a little bit up my alley.
Yeah, a little bit up your alley. But again, I wanted to get that sense of,
Why standard battleships are awesome and should have been around in Korea.
Stop. No, Sam, no. Stop, Ryan. But again, as Rick points out in the Awakening the Sleeping Giant video, you go through this mass demobilization and put all these ships in mothballs. But from what it sounds like, it was all done with the intention that things were going to be brought back relatively quickly. And as we see in Korea, a lot of the really good vessels from World War II were brought back quickly and easily.
It's very much a cherry picking. You've got all
Yeah.
these vessels
Yeah.
that you can pick, and they were able to be like, yes, Iowa class battleships, no Alaskas, no South Dakotas.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to bring back some of the Baltimores, the Oregon cities, the Des Moines. We want all of them in service.
Yeah.
No, we don't need Atlantas or
Yeah. And the unfortunate truth is that some of those classes from World War II they would never be brought back. They were just they were just irrelevant.
they saw very short service because they had so much growth in wartime that there was no room for growth a decade later.
Right.
Unfortunately, large ships like the Iowas had that room for growth.
And they were fast. They could keep up with the carriers, which is like Navy primary task number 1, not the siege engine.
Meaningless, useless.
Meaningless. Remember, after the war, it's just everything's about the carrier.
But it shouldn't be.
No, about the submarines. Okay, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll see you again next month. Thank you, Ryan. Always a pleasure.